Howdy, everybody. It is maple syrup time, and we are here 9 p.m. Eastern time in the Toronto, London, Ontario area. And we're here with the one, the only Joe Slack. He's over there.
Hey,
How you doing, Joe?
doing very well, thanks. How are you, Sen?
I'm doing well. It's good to have you. And we have Hafiz up there. Literally, that's kind of where he is because Toronto is that way from me. I'm down here in London, which is southwestern Ontario, and Hafiz
Joe's
is
in between.
yeah,
He's
and Joe's in
somewhere in the
between.
middle.
There you go.
For sure.
So welcome everybody to the show, and welcome Joe, of course. So Joe, can you just tell us what happened last weekend? That was amazing.
Well, we had the Board Game Design Virtual Summit. I think it was the 6th year doing the event. I had 12 amazing interviews with, I guess we had 14 guests in total. And
Right.
it was interviews and panels and play testing and lots of fun, as always.
That's awesome. We're going to rewind a little bit though, because we're going to come back to the virtual summit. We kind of want to hear a little bit more about how you got there, because you were the one that organized, you led, you facilitated speaking to some amazing game designers, game creators from all over the world. Created a lot of games that we have on our shelves today. But how did you get into game design? And so, yeah, we'll start there. We'll go back in time. What got you interested in game design? What led you to become a game designer?
For sure. Yeah. So I've always loved games of all types and, grew up playing euchre and cribbage and all sorts of card games with the family, especially around the holidays and that kind of thing. Played lots of board games, the monopolies and clues and everything. Got into a board game club when I was in school, and I learned how to play Risk, and was playing all these games. And then as I became an adult, playing other games, got into party games and more the modern board game scene. And it was actually me and my wife and a bunch of friends. My friends were really into Cards Against Humanity at that time when it just came out, and they're super excited about it and always wanted to play it. So we played it a couple times. That was kind of fun. There's a lot of laughs and everything. But then after we played it a few times, it got kind of routine. We kind of saw the same thing over and over again, and I was starting to think like, there's not as much to this as I want in a game. You're just providing a card. Like, I want to come up with the answers. I want to come up with something fun. So that's kind of where my first idea came from, was kind of giving those prompts like, oh, Curious George's next book or something like that. What could it be? But then giving people a little bit of a structure. So game came up with a game called Cunning Linguistics that was a bunch of different cards basically with different words, and you could manipulate them in different ways to make those answers and submit them and have a good time. And I didn't know anything about game design or game designer events and play testing and all that. I was just playing with friends and stuff, and then I got introduced going to like Snakes and Lattes board game cafe and got introduced to this amazing community. And then the ideas just kept coming. I took one of those card games that we used to play as a family and turned it into a dice game. And so instead of like a 3-hour long slog, it was like a 15-minute dice game and people like that, and just started coming with more and more ideas from there. And I've just been loving it ever since.
And
Very
how
good, very
many games
good.
do you have out there in the world?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
How many games do you now have out there in the world?
I believe 10, including expansions, if my count is right. Yeah.
And what's coming next from you, Joe?
The next game we're having is one I've designed with my oft co-designer Sylvain Plante, called Diamond Heist, and it's a 2-player cat and mouse detective game. So it's kind of based on a similar theme to Thomas Crown Affair. One of the scenes from that, like the bowler hat scene, if anybody's familiar with that, that really was the impetus for it. So it's really set in a museum, and you've got this thief that's trying to get out with the gem, and then you've got another player playing as a detective trying to stop them. So it's all like very simple through card play, but the things you're doing in the game are, as a detective, you're trying to stop them. So you're maybe like blocking off some of their entrances, setting traps, that type of thing, and trying to capture them. So you can ask questions. You can question one of the suspects and find out more information, because you have like 7 different like actors moving around, and only one of them is the thief. And then as the detective, you're doing as the thief, you're doing things like finding vent shafts and that type of thing, and slipping through to the other side of the wall, and toppling some of the monuments or leaping over them, kind of thing, trying to get out. So you're trying to get out with the diamond, and it's this cat and mouse and kind of game. And there's a really, really strong feeling as you're the detective, like I'm getting closer, I'm getting closer, I'm kind of nailing things down. And as the thief, there's this always present thought of, oh, like he's so close to catching me, but he might not even know the other player that's playing against me. Am I going to get out in time? What can I do to get out of this situation that looks like, I'm totally stuck?
And is that a game that you're publishing yourself? Is that a self-published thing,
Yeah,
or
we're going to be self-publishing that and launching on
okay, cool,
Kickstarter.
good, good, good.
We don't have an exact date, but we're aiming for aiming for spring of this year.
Okay. And is Sylvain still making like wildly outrageous prototypes?
As always, I have one of the best co-designers you could imagine out there. He brings such a crafting aspect. He'll put something together, put it on the table, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, "Oh, how long have you been working on this?" He's like, "Oh, this is the first prototype." I'm like, "Whoa, okay, this is very different from the way I do it. I do more like the MVP method of like just coming up with some cards, just testing out the idea, not coming up with a full game." But he really has like this vision for the game, and he has to put everything all together. And he's like, if it doesn't work, I'll make other arrangements or whatnot. But he just loves that aspect of it. So
Yeah, he
it comes with
adores
those
it.
beautiful prototypes.
He
Yeah.
brought an entire pyramid to the last proto spiel.
Yep.
Hey to everybody out there in Maple Syrup Land. We see Luke Barnell out there in BC and IB Jeeper, who was here last week, I believe. And it's nice to see everybody. So yeah, so we've got a couple games coming out from Joe and Sylvain. And what's the name of the game again, just so people can search for it when it comes up on Kickstarter?
That one's called Diamond Heist.
Oh, so literally what you're doing in the game.
Yep, exactly. Explains
Okay.
it exactly what
Very,
you're doing.
very on the nose.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
They,
Okay.
they always say you want a good, strong hook. People should know exactly what your game is about when they pick it up. So yeah, you're right on there.
It's about a diamond heist. So let's talk about the virtual board game design summit. And is that the official title? The
It's actually the
BG
Board Game
VB
Design Virtual Summit.
Okay.
Very close.
I thought I knew I messed something up. I think I got it right in the actual, um, titles of things over there, but not in this. The Board
good.
Game Design Virtual Summit.
Yeah, you got it.
Got it. Oh, we're changing it now.
On the fly.
Look, it'll update and everything. We have
Hey,
the
perfect.
technology. Okay, so what is this? Why did you start doing this? And I think, like Hafiz said on when we were off air, it's like I'm interested in like the nuts and bolts. Like, what does it take to run something like this when it's running all the time? No, well, not all the time, but you're getting pre-recorded stuff. You have some live stuff. You have people joining from all over the world at different hours. How do you do that?
For sure. Yeah, I'll jump right into it. And if you have any specifics you want me to go into further, just let me know. But basically, I started back in 2020. I kind of had the idea, like I was seeing different events going on, different designer events that were, in different parts of the United States and everything. And I was like, oh, that would be so cool to go to, but it's too far away, too expensive to travel, everything else. And I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if there was one closer here, or even better, maybe something online. Where anybody could attend. Doesn't matter where you are, and doesn't matter what time, because it'd just be available basically for the duration of the event. And I'd attended other summits online, like health related ones and that kind of thing, and I thought they were really cool. They had like really awesome guests. I learned a lot from them. So I thought, hey, what about doing one myself? And as I'm kind of having this idea, maybe I want to do that someday, pandemic hits and like all these other events get closed down basically. So I was like, well, nothing's even happening out there, so this would be the perfect time to start thinking about and planning for this summit and what I'd want it to be. So I just kind of started jotting down ideas and thinking, who would I love to have as guests? What would the structure be? How many guests do I want to have? What else do I want to have besides interviews? So I just made a list basically of people I wanted to have. And in the first one, it was like, I believe it was Jamie Stegmeyer and Peter C. Hayward, I believe was on the first one. Elizabeth Hargrave, and like a bunch of other really great people. And I just reached out and said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to be part of it? And most of the people were really cool and said, yeah, I'd love to be. Let's do it. So set that all up, set up the interviews, record all the interviews ahead of time, And the first one I did just audio. I wanted to just keep it simple, but I got a lot of feedback saying like, "Oh, I want to actually like see the people that we're hearing and everything." So from that year on, we did video recording for all the interviews, and then every year I tried to like incorporate a little bit more from feedback I've gotten, like having Q&A panels so people can jump in and ask specific questions of the people. First I started with like one, and now I have like three. I've had some of the guests say, "Oh, I'd be glad to do like an ask me anything session." So, just slot me in for a time kind of thing. And then I included like play testing and ask me anything with myself. I wanted to do one this year, but I wound up getting bronchitis. So I wasn't able to talk so much. So I just had to do most of the stuff behind the scenes and make sure my voice was rested for the panel. So I had to cancel that one. But other than that, yeah, that's basically how I got it up and running.
Any ideas for improvements or tweaks for next year's summit?
I think just more stuff. So I'd love to incorporate more play testing, maybe more sessions if any of the guests wanted to do anything else special, like ask me anythings, and just maybe like reach out and just hear from people like what were the most important things that they wanted to hear. Were there any guests that they wanted to hear more from? Any other guests that they wanted to hear from? Because I've had some guests return who've been fantastic, who've really gotten really good feedback on them, and they've had a lot of great things to say. And I wanted to pick their brains on something else, but I also like to have a lot of new people in, quite a spectrum. I like to have people with a lot of experience out there, plus some people who are kind of new. Like I had Yurakuno Gabriel, who I've worked with, who ran the Ganada Kickstarter last year. First Kickstarter, still learning a lot, but wanted to like get him out there, so people who were kind of in that same boat of thinking about launching, that type of thing, so he could really like share what he experienced. And just like having a broad range of people, publishers, designers, content creators, people who are creating great platforms for game designers, and just kind of just make sure that it's something that everybody's going to continue to want to take part in.
And I know in the past you've actually had done shout outs in different groups like the Board Game Design Lab, asking people who would they like to hear from. So if anyone watching has suggestions for someone they would love to hear from, what's the best way that they could get in touch to share? Hey, I think we should be hearing from Sen Funling, who would be an amazing speaker for the conference.
Absolutely. And Sen has been on the virtual summit in previous years as well.
Yeah, it's fun. It's good times.
So, yeah, for sure. I would say the best way to reach out to me is my email. So joe@boardgamedesigncourse.com. If you have any ideas, want to hear from people. It's kind of hard sometimes because I get ideas like somebody will say like, "Oh, Reiner Knizia or Uwe Rosenberg," or somebody like that. And sometimes I've been able to reach out to these people. Sometimes I haven't been able to find contact information, or sometimes somebody's like, "Oh, here's my charge to speak at something like that." And I'm like, "Ooh, that's like way more than I was expecting to get involved in this kind of thing." But I do love hearing different suggestions at the very least. So it just gives me other ideas for potential people to reach out to as well.
I'm just going to put your email on there.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, normally we do that at the end. I just kind of jumped the gun a little bit. But was there anything that was really interesting all the sessions were interesting. I was sharing before the live stream that I binged it this entire weekend, but I'm wondering from your perspective, having run it for 6 years, what were some of the nuggets that jumped out for you, the things that you thought were really interesting, those things that spark that feeling when you're a game designer and you're listening to a podcast about game design or watching something like this or joining the summit, and there's a moment that makes you want to just go out and design your next design. You just have that. Did you have any of those moments throughout the virtual summit?
For sure. First, I'll just say, like, with all the guests, they had so much wisdom and experience in different ways. So I'm always amazed to hear the different stories of people and how they found success. Like a lot of people have found success through Kickstarter, like Emily Vincent with her Pirates of the High Teas, Amy and Dusty from Duxomnium Games, and also like Gabe Barrett using GameFound. He's used kind of a different platform and gone that way. But then like Anne-Marie DeWitt from Fireside Games, they focused really, this was way before Kickstarter. She really focused on meeting up with people, like going to the retail stores, meeting with people there, and then meeting with distributors and that kind of thing. And they formed a lot of strong relationships with people who keep coming back for their games. So one of the big things was like that personal connection like how important that is, and thinking about like, is that something I want to do? It's a big commitment to be like driving to all these different stores all over the different place and making connections and that kind of thing. But are there more ways that I can do that on a more personal basis, that kind of thing? But also, in particular, the interview with Alon Lee from Exploding Kittens, he just has such a different mindset than so many different people in this space and elsewhere too. Like I had like just loved hearing his stories about all his different marketing tactics, like going to Gen Con and like saying like, we can't advertise here. Well, let's put something like urinal pucks kind of in the urinals and kind of thing. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. We're like, there's nowhere saying I can't advertise there. Every other space is available. Creating a giant vending machine at a convention where people could get crazy stuff from, and like just all these outside the box ideas, and how he thinks about games, and how he's really focused down. Like he has all these ideas about what their company does, but really narrowed it down to like, it's not the game that should be fun, it's the people should be fun. Like the game should make people be fun, that kind of thing. So a lot of amazing insights from him in particular. But I learned, lots from all the guests, I would definitely say.
Hafiz, did you partake in any of the videos from this weekend?
I binged everything. The only thing I missed out on was the live Q and A's, which I was
Right.
really hoping to do, but then adult life got in the way. And I mean, one of the videos that really jumped out to me was the one that you mentioned earlier. The gentleman that wanted to launch a Kickstarter. Him and his father were trying to find a game, and it didn't exist, so they wanted to create it. And they just looked up how to make a game, and they came across you. And that really struck me because that's essentially the same journey I went on around that time of the first virtual summit. I was looking around to see what resources I could find online to guide me through creating my own game. And this guy named Joe Slack kept popping up. And then I saw that he was going to be running this virtual summit, and he had some really cool people that everyone else was suggesting. Read Jamie's blog and check out Gabe's podcast. And so, like, okay, let me join onto this. And that was, I think, that was the thing that pushed me further down the rabbit hole. So it was really interesting to hear someone else go through it. And I think that comes to another thing that's connected to the virtual summit, which is um, you're not just creating these opportunities for people, you're also helping to mentor people. So I believe he mentioned he had gone through your course. I'd actually gone through your course as well too, and you've given me quite a lot of great feedback over the years. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because in your origin story, you were just trying to find a game that you felt you wanted to play with your friends, but then you've now moved into a space where you're supporting other game designers. So how did that come about, and um, what have you learned along the way of mentoring other game designers?
For sure. I think it kind of comes naturally to me in a way. I always love helping other people, teaching them things I've learned, that kind of thing. When I was working in healthcare in my previous life, in the kind of data and analytics world, I kind of became on my team one of those people that you go to when you have questions. And I had, some of the junior staff, some of the junior analysts, I was mentoring them, type of thing. And one guy actually dubbed me the professor, because I would do like lunch and learn sessions and things like that. So I've always had this in me that I like, if I have something I can share and I can help somebody else who's just starting out, I'd love to be able to. So that really came through as well when I'm designing games. At first, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I had to learn all this stuff on my own. And then by the time I was like 3 or 4 years into this, I was like, I've learned so much. But I kind of look back and I was like, where did I learn it all from? Well, a lot of it was just on my own. I read blogs here, watched videos here, read some stuff here, but there was nothing really comprehensive that kind of put it all together. I said, well, even though like I'm still learning and there's still a lot I have to go through, I want to share what I have learned, so that somebody doesn't have to take like 4 years to get to where I am, not understanding like the board game design community and playtesting and all this stuff. So I wrote my first book, The Board Game Designer's Guide. So it kind of started from there. And then after that, I had the idea of running a course and that kind of thing. I taught at Laurier University for a short time, filling in for a mat leave. And I had kind of had the idea already of like doing a course so I can like reach out to more people outside. It was like great to teach these students, but it's like just some people in one small concentrated area. And, these people are going to be probably going off and designing video games or something like that for their career. I wanted to really be able to tap into people that are super interested in designing board games and how to do that. So started doing that through blogging, through my books, through designing courses, and mentoring. I've done mentoring programs where people asked me to join, and I helped other people, and then just like consulting and helping other people and just answering questions online or when everybody had questions, or at game design events and that kind of thing. I love being able to help other people and you know launch them a little bit further so they don't have to go through all the struggles that I had to the first few years.
What do you think your biggest struggles were in the first few years?
One of my first things was I was worried that everybody's going to steal my idea. I was like, oh, what? Like, I got this idea for a game. It's going to be $1 million game, but I don't want to show too many people because what if they take this idea and run with it and make $1 million with it or something like that? Of course, that was a fool's errand because very, very few games actually make that kind of money. First of all, but also I learned in the community that that's not the way most people are. 99.9% of the people are there. They have their own ideas. They want to design their own games. They're not there to steal yours. It's very rare for something like that to happen. It happens, but not often at all. So I think that was one of my first struggles. And then just understanding like the importance of playtesting going along with that. Putting it in front of a bunch of different people, not just playing it with, my friends and my family and that kind of thing, but getting some unbiased feedback from designers and potential people who would be, my audience and that type of thing. And then just moving forward and making the game better along the way.
And how do you mentor people through their own troubles? Like what if they have troubles that you've never experienced? Like do you have a network of other people that you foist them onto, or what happens in those cases?
Yeah, if it's something that I'm not as familiar with or haven't experienced, I know a lot of the other great people out there in the community, and just a lot of people who've written blogs. Maybe Jamie Stegmeyer has a blog on that particular topic. Maybe Sen has some material on that like Cell Sheets or something like that. I know your publication to inspiration page, that was a huge help when I was learning Cell Sheets. So just like other people I know in the community and networking, leading them towards those people, towards those resources that are out there, or in some cases maybe learning a bit more about that so that I can help that person a little bit more.
Excellent.
That was very cool. What has been your biggest insight in taking on that mentorship role?
Biggest insight. That I always have to go back and kind of think with a beginner's mentality, because so many people are coming in and I might think I've been doing this for like 12 years or so, right? I've gone through all these experience, but I always try to go back and try to remember, okay, well, what was it like when I was first starting out? Because so many of the people are in that exact same position. They don't know what a playtest is. They don't know how to run a Kickstarter or anything about that. They don't know about pitching to publishers. Quite often, they haven't had a lot of experience. So I'm able to kind of go back to that kind of initial stage, and think about, what did I need to learn at that point? What were the most important things? Like designing that prototype and getting out in front of other people. What were some of the biggest concerns I had, like having my idea stolen, that type of thing. So really the biggest insights are like remembering to go back and remember those times and being able to relate that to people, because when you're talking to somebody new, they're not going to have that same kind of knowledge as you. So you have to kind of start with the basics.
Do
Right.
you find that helps with your game design? Because they say a lot of times the beginner mindset is a growth mindset, right? You don't know what the rules are, you don't know what the limitations are just yet. And so having through mentorship, having had to go back to what it's like to be a beginner time and time and again, have you found that actually helps you in your own game design?
It has at times for sure. Kind of like thinking outside the box or thinking about something, like some people will come to me and they haven't played a lot of games and that kind of thing. And they're trying to create this kind of game, but they don't know, there's standard conventions and certain types of games, that type of thing. So definitely, getting me to think, so how would I approach this in a different way? Like if I didn't maybe have as much experience with, if I'm making a co-op game, if I'm making a solo game, what are some different ways to think about doing this that are maybe kind of non-standard, or that if I hadn't played all these what I might think about. But definitely the experience plays in there. So it also helps me to like trim a lot of things out, like because you can go down like 17 different rabbit holes rather, trying to kind of guide your game in the next direction. And now I'm able to cut out 15 of those fairly quickly too. So I think the experience really helps along with that.
Hmm. Hey, welcome, TK. Good to see you. Kinson Games in the house. So, when we're talking about your role with the course and then the virtual summit, and one thing I don't even know if we mentioned Hafiz, but Joe, when did you take like the proto spiel stuff under your like your wing, and how often are we doing that now, and where is it taking place, and all that stuff?
For sure. I can't remember when we started. I think probably 2018, 2019 was our first event. So it's kind of funny. The story was we were all at the Protospiel in Michigan,
Hmm.
and there's a little community center kind of just off the site of the hotel where everything happens, and there's a hotel there. So there were, I think, four of us who were all from Toronto, and we were all leaving the hotel at the same time and walking across the parking lot, going, "Hey, this is so cool! Hey, we're all here. That's awesome." We're like, hold on a second, like we're all from Toronto and we came all this way to do this event, and it's great and it's fantastic meeting all the other designers we might not meet, but like why can't we do this as well, right? And we wouldn't have to travel and everything, and we could do that for our local community. So we started talking about that, and then we just decided, I think it was the next year, we decided to put on our first event and go from there. So I have to say it was Kevin Carmichael who really led the charge with it. He was kind of leading it, and others were supporting him, like Jeff Frazier, myself, and Sylvain, helping him out and supporting him. And then as things kind of got a little busier for him, he was running a dance studio and he was crazy busy and everything. He's like, I need some more help here. So I was like, yeah, I can definitely pitch in here. So he and I have kind of become the lead organizers of the event, and we put it on. We were putting it on once a year. The pandemic, of course, threw everything off and our schedules and everything. But once we got kind of back into it, into the swing of things, we started running it once a year. And then we had one event in the spring, and a lot of people were saying, when's the next event? We can't wait. We can't wait. And we were kind of like, we could probably run a second one of these, maybe one in the fall, because I think when we started, we were in the fall, or at some point we're starting in the fall. And we're like, yeah, what would it look like if we did two events? And we checked with our venue, and they had some availability. So we said, let's give it a go. Let's put it out there for the second time, and reached out to people, and we had great attendance again. And since then, we've been doing two a year, one in the spring and one in the fall.
Toronto's a big city.
Mhm.
And it's a city that people like to go to as well. So I definitely think it can support two events a year for
Oh yeah.
this type of thing, if not more.
Mhm.
Although a 6 month cycle is a good cycle for development, anyways, right? So some people need that amount of time before they can come back with the same game or another game. And then there's other people who could like every 2 months you could do something, every month you could do something, and there wouldn't be enough. But I
Mhm.
do think that it takes a lot of effort to run these things. So where are you finding all the time to organize all this stuff, Joe? What is fueling you? Are you do you have like a caffeine drip that constantly runs into your veins? What's going on here?
No, I mean, I'm doing this full time, so I have a little bit more time available than somebody who would be working a full time job and trying to design games and run events
Hmm.
and everything at the same time. Luckily, we have an amazing community, so it makes the events run so smooth. Having people there that are so willing to give back to people, who when they have something set up, they're like, I got this set up on the table. I'm playing this other game because another designer wanted a thing, but I can clean it up if anybody else wants space. Like, just having such a great community makes it so easy. And we built up an email list, and now we're getting like 80, 90 people showing up. At first it was events of like 40 or 50, but they've just grown and grown from there. So I think a lot of it is just the community just being so laid back, easygoing, wonderful to work with. It makes our lives so much easier. And finding a venue that we can always find time. They've been great to us, very reasonable with pricing and availability. and they love having us there because we keep coming back. And yeah, aside from that, it's just basically reaching out to the community and letting people know about the time and everything, getting the badges ready. But we kind of got a system in place, so it's not as much work as it could be. And I should mention, we actually technically run 3 events a year because we're also at Breakout Con in
Yeah.
Toronto, the big convention there. We have a smaller playtesting area there. It used to be run by the Proto TO group. Unfortunately, they kind of disbanded, and they asked us, or we were kind of stepping in and saying, yeah, we'd be totally willing to run that as well. And so we run actually 3 events a year technically. Just one of them we don't have to organize.
Yeah, we had Pam here the other day, so yeah,
Yeah, Pam's
that's
awesome.
per TO, way to go. TK is saying, I know Winnipeg isn't super close, but we need to get Dennis over to one of those as as Kinson Games resident Canadian. So yeah. Oh, by the way, TK, there's a Winnipeg game convention that I didn't know about that my friend Jeff was at. And I'm like, what is that? He goes, oh yeah, it's every year. It's the middle of the winter. It's like, late January, early February. It's like, I don't know if I actually want to be there in Winnipeg in the middle of winter, but I am planning on driving across Canada this summer, at least half of Canada. So I'm not sure if I'm going East Coast to the center or West Coast back to the center, but I'll do one of the two this year, and the other one I'll do next year. So hopefully I'll stop by. Uh, yeah, Winnetoba. Is it Winnetoba? Is that
Hmm.
what it's called? I don't know. Oh no, you're saying the yeah, Winnetoba. That's Manitoba plus Winnipeg. I don't know what you're saying there, TK. But there is a con at this time. Is it called Winnetoba? Maybe. Um, oh, it was during the Dice Tower cruise this year. I would probably rather be on the Dice Tower cruise. Just saying. Although I really don't like cruises. I think I just get bored on a boat. But if you're playing board games, maybe. I've never been on a board game cruise. Maybe I should try that. But I
You mean you'd
will. I will.
rather be? Sorry, you'd rather be on like a cruise ship with a bunch of awesome people in warm weather than in a place known as Winterpeg?
No, I mean yes, but also no. I do like Winnipeg. Winnipeg's actually a pretty cool city. Cool being the operative word at this time of year. Ha ha ha. So yeah, I guess that is a stop on my trip from Vancouver all the way back to Ontario. Will be to stop in and see Dennis. I'll stop and give Dennis a chat when I drive all the way across and record things for Ludology. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. So let's switch a little bit. Unless Hafiz, do you have more questions about the summit and anybody out there in Meeple Syrup Land? If you're out there listening, watching, if you have any questions about the summit, feel free to write them in the chat. We'll get to them. But
Yeah.
Hafiz, if you have more, we can go ahead, or we can start talking about solo modes.
Well, for anyone who missed the summit and they want to go back and they want to take a look either at this year or previous years, are they able to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The passes are still available. You can get them on boardgamedesign.course.com. You can find all the information there, and yeah, you can go to this year's summit, previous summits. So they're always all available, all 6 years now.
That's awesome.
That's very cool. So moving on, when we were talking to Duxomnium, which is a fun name to say, Dusty and Amy the other week, they had mentioned that you, Joe Slack, were responsible for, I don't know, like almost all of the solo modes that they
Hmm.
have. How did you start doing that for them? And what's it like building solo modes for a game that already exists in
Absolutely, yeah.
parts?
So with Duxomnium, I met them through watching the Board Game Design Lab, seeing them on there and hearing their story about their $1 million plus campaign with Botany. And I know I had seen it on Kickstarter as well when it was on there, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, just hearing their story, how they came to be. And actually, for one of my virtual summits, I reached out to them because I was like, hey, I think your story is fantastic. Would you guys be interested in coming on the summit? And they were totally on board. So we did the interview, And I always do like a little bonus interview afterwards, and we take like a little break in between. And it just so happened I was like, oh yeah, like we are just talking about other stuff, and they're like, yeah, we're getting ready for our next game, Lafleur. They said the only thing is, we need to make a solo mode, and like we're not really solo players. Like they said, it worked well for botany because it was just very straightforward and people liked it. But do you know anybody that does solo modes? And I'm like, me. Like I had done a couple before, plus done some solo games of my own, that kind of thing. So I was like, yeah, if you're interested, I'm glad to like learn more about your game and see what it's all about. And if you're interested, if we're both interested in working together, and maybe we can make it work. It just depends if we're both kind of on, or we're all on the same page. So they were like, yeah, that would be cool. So we set up a time to meet, and we went on Tabletop Simulator, and they showed me the game. And already I was like, oh, I've got some ideas for like how this might work and stuff. And they were like, cool, like run with it. How does this work? How are we gonna organize how we're going to work together and stuff? And we just talked about that and started going from there. And um, they really really enjoyed when I showed them the solo mode. And what I also do like to do when I make solo modes is make scenarios. So I like to kind of come up with like a standard way to play it that feels quite like you're playing against another player. I try to get that feeling as much as possible, but also make it very easy. So if it's an AI opponent, like it's just a matter of like flipping over a couple cards and doing things, you're spending your time focusing on your turn, not the AI's turn. So I really tried to implement that, and they really loved it. And then they were like, oh yeah, so it's scenarios as well. So you can play the standard mode. Here's how you play against the AI. But now that you've played it a couple times, if you want to have a couple extra challenges, I like to throw in new scenarios. So it might be like, okay, win the game, but have this number of flower cards in front of you at the end. Win, but without ever doing this kind of thing. So like it really makes you think in a different way. So you might have a particular strategy that you like to employ, but now it's like, okay, now I got to do this other thing, and I don't usually go that path. How can I go about doing that and accomplishing that? And they really loved how I put that all together, and fans of the game enjoyed it as well. And then they asked me, hey, do you want to work on our next game? So then came Artistry, and then came Endearment. And now I'm working on their Botany Floral Dragons, just basing the solo mode based on what they had on the original Botany, and just kind of growing from there. So I've just been loving that, loving designing the solo modes and trying to make them feel as close to as you would playing against another player, competitive, and making it easy.
Right. So those games all have CanCon if we're going to be legally forced to play board games with Canadian content. Those games have CanCon. IB Jeeper, sorry, is asking in the current gaming market, how important would you say it is that a game has a solo mode?
I'd say in general, quite important. Not everybody is into solo modes, but I mean, unless it's a party game, unless it's something that's like 4 to 8 players or something like that, where you're not even going to think about like a solo mode really. Um, you really want to at least consider making a solo mode. It doesn't work for every game, especially if there's like negotiations and different tactics and that type of thing. But if you're able to, it's definitely worth at least thinking about how to create a solo mode experience, because there are some people out there, when they see a game, if it doesn't say 1 to whatever player count, they're just like, that's out for me. Because some people enjoy playing solo or want to learn the game solo, so they can teach it to other people. For some people, that's a buy no buy decision. So I think it's important to at least look at that, because it's definitely a growing segment. Like when I started making my first solo game, Relics of Rajvahara, there was a Facebook group for solo games, and I think it was slowly approaching like 20,000 people. And over the years, I think I don't know, it's like 40, 50, 60,000 now, like in the course of just a number of years. So definitely that market is growing. So it's definitely something to at least think about, whether you can develop yourself or find another developer out there that really specializes in solo modes. And there's other people outside there besides me for sure out there.
So you're just talking about
Yeah, I
creating.
find people who like solo like solo.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about creating solo modes for games that either started off a 3 to 4 player or that build up. But you've also, as you mentioned, you have Relics of Releva Heart. Can never say that one, so I'm going to say this one instead.
Sure.
You make solo specific games, and so I was wondering how the process looks for just creating a game where the intention is it's a solo game for that purpose versus creating a solo mode?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Relics of Rajahara was my first solo game, and I actually brought it to BreakoutCon when it was fairly early on. And I was like, hey, let's try this with, a few people. Let's see if this is co op kind of thing. And very quickly, it was like, hey, one person's just doing everything, moving around the blocks and solving the thing. They're kind of taking turns. It's like, well, it's fine to take turns, but really, I think this really shines as a solo game. So that got me really thinking, okay, how can I design this just around like a solo game, a solo mode? So when I'm designing a solo game, kind of on its own, I like to think about what I like to experience and what do other people like to experience in it. For a lot of people, they don't really care for beating your high score kind of thing. So I try to avoid just a game where you're trying to score and then maybe the next game you score higher or whatnot. A lot of people say that's not the thing that they really want to go for. They really want an objective. So maybe there's missions you have to accomplish. Maybe there's a series of different challenges you need to go through. Or maybe you're just playing and excuse me, you're trying to hit thresholds. Like if you get over 20 points, that's like good or whatever, like thematic kind of thing. Over 30 points is whatever, and 40 you're, like a god of this game kind of thing. So there's different ways to do it, but I try to make it so that there's some kind of objective. So there's like a win-loss condition. With Relics of Rajavahara, it's very much um, focused on like almost like a puzzly game, like a Legend of Zelda or Fire and Ice, where you're like pushing blocks and trying to solve things and go one level to the next. So with that game, the intention was really, okay, you accomplish this thing, you beat one level, you move on to the next. You're always progressing. And then after 10 levels, you're facing off against your nemesis. Then you open a new box and here's a new challenge. So one way I try to do that is incorporating new challenge and new things. So it's almost like a tutorial. Learn how to do this. And then you learn how to do this. And then there's something new coming in. So you're not having to learn all the rules and all the blocks at once. And for night moves, Gabe Barrett actually reached out to me because he does the solo game of the month that he puts out on GameFound. And he reached out to me because he said, I don't really have a puzzly game in my lineup. Would this be something that I could get you to make? Would you have any ideas kind of thing? And we talked back and forth and came up with the idea and actually used the same Relics board. If you notice in Night Moves, you'll see it's the same 5x8 board. It just works so well. And I came up with some different ideas of how to progress through a number of different levels and then face off against the end guy, but in a totally different way than Relics of Rajavahara, using cards as doing almost like chess moves. Like I'm going to do a night move. I'm going to move over here to try to get treasures, to try to beat the enemies, to try to get out of the game. So yeah, that's kind of how I went around developing those games, kind of with that kind of series of progression and levels.
Very cool. Hey to Matt Paquette, and IB Jeeper says that he's definitely not a high score player and never was back in the arcade days either. So I think IB Jeeper is on the same wavelength as you, Joe, in terms of like goals and objects and objectives and things like that. TK asks or says, when designing your solo modes, do you have a lot of other players testing them, or do you do most of the testing yourself?
Good question. I spend quite a bit of time myself designing it to make sure that it really runs smoothly. But I do get other play testers in there as well. So I need to make sure, in particular, one thing that's hard with solo games or solo modes is getting the difficulty level just right. And I'm still trying. I haven't perfected that, but for sure. And Relics of Rajavahara, I've had some people say the first X number of levels are too easy. I wish they got like harder, faster. Whereas other people are like, oh, they like the progression, they like how it goes, kind of thing. And then with one of my next game, 14 Frantic Minutes, which is a 1 to 4 player co-op game, for that one, oh, Huffy says it right there. Oh, awesome. This is a co-op game where you're racing against the clock, trying to basically solve circuits to get from one room to the next. And I thought it was the difficulty level is pretty good, and you can scale it up. Like here's kind of like the standard, and then if you want like progression through all these different levels, till you get to like the absolute hardest mode, which is kind of insane. I thought that it was at a good level. I tested a lot myself. I tested with other people as well. But then I had a lot of people, including Rado, who was like, I played this 6 times and we have not been able to get through the 7 rooms from kind of the standard mode. So one of the biggest challenges is just getting the difficulty level just right for solo mode. So that's definitely a challenge that I've faced. But yeah, in terms of the testing, I do quite a bit of it myself to make sure everything flows and the levels are kind of in a good progression. And then I put it out to other people. And then I get their feedback, especially for like Relics of Rajvahara. I did a campaign late last year that was a year of relics, which was you get a print and play or display and play card because the cards they don't need to be shuffled or anything. It's just this is the level setup basically. So I set that up, and every week they're getting a new level to try out. So I created over 50 new levels, and I sent it out to a bunch of people. I reached out to a whole bunch of people who were already Relics fans, and I kind of posted it and I said, "Hey, if anybody's interested in testing some levels, and I'll give you the whole print and play for free for a thank you." And I had, I don't know, 60 people or something like that reach out. And then I just divided up all the levels so everybody had like 5 levels kind of thing, and I got feedback from all of them and consolidated all that. And I discovered, as I expected, a few of those levels were not solvable. And I went back to them. I'm like, they're absolutely right. It's not solvable. And that's why we play test. I would hate to put something out there and find out it's not solvable. A little easier if it's print and play because I can make an adjustment rather than having actually printed and manufactured. But yeah, it's so important to get it out in front of other people, get their feedback, and see and also see that like the difficulty levels because I got them to scale it. I said on a scale of 1 to 5, how fun was this? On a difficulty scale of 1 to 5, how difficult was this? And the ones that were just like way too easy, I cut. The ones that weren't fun, I cut. The ones that didn't have solutions, I cut. And then I develop new levels, and I'm going to be testing them with a lot of those kind of key play testers who were really keen to do more levels as well.
I think that's the nice thing about solos is that you can test them yourself and people can test them without having to get their whole game group together, and it's still a good experience if you like that kind of experience, right? Um, have you had any people who are like leery about playing solo, but then they play your game and they come around to it?
Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes when I've been at like a playtesting event or online, and we're in a group, and I was like, oh, I've got this game to play and it's solo, and maybe there's only one other person there at the time or one other person at the table, and they're like, well, I don't really play solo, but I'll give it a try kind of thing. So there definitely are those cases where somebody's never tried it, or they think, oh, that's kind of weird setting up a game and playing it by myself, despite the fact that so many people play a video game all by themselves, but you're setting something up on a table. So some people have a little bit of a reluctance, or they think, oh, that's kind of weird, setting up a game and playing it by yourself. But definitely I've had some people kind of come around and be like, oh, this is actually a pretty cool experience. I might do this again. I have a co-designer, Joachim, who's in Germany, and I got him playing, some of my games. I got him to. He's like, I was never a solo player before, but I started
And
playing.
now he is.
I tested night moves and relics, and I absolutely love it. And even for those solo games, you can technically play them with other people, especially some of my games where you're going through levels. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I play it with my spouse. I play with my partner. I play with my kids. They try the level, and if they can't get through, then I'll give it a try." That kind of thing too. So there is that flexibility to be able to do that. But yeah, I've definitely turned some people into solo fans. Luckily.
Have you ever had a solo design where you started working on it and realized it actually worked better at a higher player count, or vice versa? You started with an idea that would work with a small group, and you're like, you want to know what? I want to trim this down, make it a solo game.
Yeah, I mean, I did mention Relics of Rajahara, thinking that it could be a more of a cooperative game, and then discovering very quickly, no, it works so much better as just a solo only player game, and just focus on that and lean into it. With other games, have I designed anything that just turned out to just be good for solo mode, or vice versa? I've definitely played some games where I've tried to do a solo mode, and I'm like, it's just not working. Like there's so much interaction in the game. Like my game License to Grill that came out with Greater Than Games. That one, there's so much interaction. You're putting things on the grill, you're taking things off. I was kind of like, I don't know if a solo mode's actually going to work for this because there's so much interaction. So definitely there's been some games where it's like, this isn't going to work, or maybe I try something and I'm like, no, it just doesn't have that right feel. And I'd rather have on the box 2 to 4 players and know that it plays solidly at those counts than have 1 to 4 and being like, it plays really well at 2 to 4. And the solo mode's okay. Like if I'm putting out a solo mode, it has to feel as good as playing multiplayer, like in its own way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like it when there's this like it feels tacked on is the word that we
Mm.
mostly use when we talk about that, but it feels like you're trying to sell it as opposed to it really deserves to have that mode. Luke says that it's funny. He plays solo games a lot, primarily, but the games that he tends to design are for three and up in player count, which is an interesting kind of revelation. IBG asks, is it expensive to have someone create a solo mode? And how long does that typically take? Mostly because of the other thing where IBG said that he's currently pretty far along on two games, but both have a player count of 2 to 6 and are more fun at higher player counts. Would it make sense to, hire somebody to try to create a solo mode in that case? Because he doesn't think he could do it.
Hmm. Okay. Um, well, like definitely as a designer, you can try some different things and see if maybe you can come up with something. You never know; something might come out of that, and you might come up with a great idea. But if you're looking to hire somebody else for a solo mode, I would say it's well worth. If you're going to take that approach, I'd say the first thing is just to find somebody that you trust, find somebody that you think does really good solo modes. Maybe if you played others in other games, reach out to them, see if they're interested, and maybe if you got your game on TTS or if they happen to be a local person, you can meet up with them. But just show them the game and say, this is the game. And like, do you think it has potential to have a solo mode? Do you have any ideas for this? Is this something that you might be interested in? And then right away, they may say, like, no, there's just like too much interaction and stuff. I can't really see a solo mode working. Or they might be like, oh, I can totally see how this would work, how I would do the AI opponent, or how I would have you play the game by yourself. And in terms of the development, I can't speak for other designers because everybody, takes different amounts of times to do different things. I feel I'm getting fairly quick at designing the solo modes. For the solo mode itself, quite often I will have it like fully developed within about 10 hours of time. If that designer wants scenarios, which I often do, like with Duxomnium, that might be another 10 hours to make sure it's well tested and working out really well. And then, like for them, they often have expansions. So if they have an expansion, that might be, another 10 hours, making sure this all works together with this expansion or with this expansion. So for me, I kind of do almost like 10 hours at a time in segments for that type of thing. But it really depends. Like if you want that person to also do like a ton of playtesting with other people, I try to get it in front of at least a couple other people, but their game's already working and I'm just working out the tweaks and then hand it all over to them. It depends because you could do the method like I usually do is I develop it, I do a little bit of playtesting with others, but I hand it over to them and then say, go ahead, like do more playtesting with it, get in front of your fans, and see if there's anything that breaks. If there is anything they need to change, come back to me and we'll talk about it and work it out. But if you want that designer to also do extensive playtesting with it, then that's obviously going to be way more hours.
Do you find it easier developing a solo mode for someone else's game versus developing one for a game that you're working on?
Great question. In a lot of cases, I have actually, surprisingly, when I look back, like the four games that I'm coming up with, or sorry, the four games that I've come up with the solo mode for Duxomnium, I found they were straightforward. Like right after playing their game, I think coming at it from an outsider, seeing how it plays, and then just kind of looking at it and saying like, oh, I could totally see what you're going for. Like for example, in Lafleur, there's this competition every round, whichever different key elements you have the most in, you will attract that visitor. So I really wanted it to feel like that person was competing with them. That was like the key part of that game, that feeling of going back and forth and, oh, they're ahead of me in this. Oh, now I'm ahead of them. Now I'm going to get that visitor, but they're going to get this other one. So I really wanted to implement that kind of feel into the game. So I think in a lot of ways, I have found that a lot easier because I've definitely designed a lot of other games where I don't have a solo mode and I didn't really necessarily um, try all that hard to come up with one because I was just like, no, it plays well at this count. And maybe this is before I started really getting into designing solo modes and that kind of thing and designing solo games. But there have definitely been a number of games where I haven't even really gone into the effort of doing the solo mode. So yeah, I would say in my case, probably working with other people, I find it fairly straightforward in a lot of games.
That's interesting because it loops back to your origin story earlier. You were playing Cards Against Humanity, and you're like, I could make this better. This is a game that exists, and there's something I want that's missing, and so I'm going to add that on here. Do you feel like That's how you approach your solo designs when working with others. You played the game and you're like, okay, what can I take that I would like to see and build that out in solo mode?
Yeah, it's not so much in like in my original case where I'm trying to make it better, but just trying to get that same kind of feel. Like my goal is really a few things. So number one, make it easy to manage. So if it's like an AI opponent or if you're just playing by yourself, make it very easy to manage so the player can focus on their turn and what they're doing. Make the other player play competitively. So they're going to have like a close score at the end. You're going to maybe win, maybe the majority, but there's going to be a lot of close games. Maybe you're going to lose some of those games, depending on how good you are at the game. And and the third one would really be around trying to invoke that same feeling that you get from the multiplayer game. Very much with like Lafleur, I really wanted to tap into that feeling. What does it feel like to play against an AI opponent that is competing with you just like another opponent would? And I loved it when I showed that game to Dusty from Dux Omnium the first time he played the solo mode for this. He was like, as he's going through the game, like the AI opponent did something and like won that visitor at the last second. He's like, oh, that's exactly what Amy would do, his wife, right? And it really felt like so by the end he's like, yeah, this felt like I was playing against her, almost like she did like all the moves that I think that she would do in real life and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean that was really fun to discover.
So did you call the player, the solo player, like Mary then, or?
Oh, good question. I let them go with the name, but they came up with the name Abigail Inglesbury, I believe, AI for their first game, Botany. So I think they've either gone with that or just said like your opponent or something like that. But
Mhm.
when they told me they had already had a name for them, I'm like, yeah, just run with that. Like it's familiar, it's common across all your games, so people will see that and probably enjoy it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think part of the reason why I like developing for other people's games is because the game is kind of locked down to a point where my brain doesn't have to think about what the possibilities are. There's a lot more constraints from a design perspective, and so I find designing within other people's rule sets when those rule sets are pretty inflexible to be liberating for me in a way that it's
Mm.
like, oh, I don't have to think of, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? I just have to think of how do we replicate the same experience within a different kind of maybe mode of play, whether it's solo or co-op or storytelling or whatever it is, right? So
Mhm.
yeah. Luke is saying that he enjoys playing the Teotihuacan solo mode and apiary as well. And I'd be Jeepers asks a question. They ask, when you develop a solo mode, do you typically get some type of creation credit?
Yep, absolutely. That's a great question. I always want to make sure that I'm in there as the solo mode designer. So I'm not front of the box, but definitely like in the rules. You'll have my name in there for sure.
Yeah, I think it's very valuable, especially in this industry that, you're kind of only as good as your last product in many cases, and it's sort of like academia, like publish or perish. And so you kind of want to have your name in as many places as it can be, and for like proper attribution. So it's important that when we talk about games as people who are doing media stuff, that we mention who the designers are, who the publishers are, maybe who the art, like if we know that kind of stuff, it doesn't hurt anybody for us to talk about that, right? So when Dusty and Amy from Duxomnium are talking about their solo modes, they always mention Joe, right? So
Mm.
it's just, paying that kind of thing forward. It's a good idea. Very cool. All right. Hey, look at that. It is time. What is going on? How did that hour pass so fast?
Real
Well,
quick.
yeah, everybody. It was so nice for you to just drop by, Joe. It was so nice for all the guests to drop by. IB Jeeper, Luke, Matt, TK, everybody's out there. Who else was out there? Alex, Cannon. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say hi to you, Alex. There you are there. It was really nice to see everybody. And hopefully we'll have more people as we keep on trucking with what's happening in this new and improved, or at least the new
Mhm.
maple syrup. Not saying that it's not an improvement. I just don't want to downplay the contributions of past hosts and co-hosts and things like that. So, if you would like to speak with me about anything, game wise or otherwise, Maybe you don't like my hat. I don't know. You can tell me on Blue Sky at Senfeng Lim. And you can talk about maple syrup on all the things. Printer and games on IG is where you can find Hafiz and also your brother, right?
Yeah,
Who
he's there
looks
too.
exactly like you. So basically, it's just you
There's no
times
proof
two.
that he exists.
Uh,
It could just be me in a mirror.
it could just be that. You can find Joe's website and therefore Joe at boardgamedesigncourse.com. And the email, I think I linked it above. So you can uh, take that there, IB Jeeper, at joe at boardgamedesigncourse.com. I'm going to type it into the chat because it'll actually exist for
Mm.
a longer time if I do it that way.
And
Board
instead of doing
game.
that, I'm just going to do a quick announcement. So next week we're taking a short hiatus. So there won't be an episode on the 18th, but when we come back on the 25th, we have some exciting guests, as equally as exciting as Joe. So you know it's going to be a good time. We have Hot Banana Games who's going to be joining us. So
Oh,
that's
nice.
Pauline and Mary, and they're going to be talking about drawing from your own culture to build really cool board games. They have a game that's going to be, I think it's launching this coming week on
Yeah. So
Kickstarter.
during Chinese New Year week,
Mhm.
Mm.
it's very appropriate. Lion Dance will be launching from my little sisters. There we go. You can help keep the lights on if you'd like at patreon.com/maple syrup. Luke asks a question, last minute question from Luke. He's like bombing. What would you say? Would you say that writing a solo mode is like writing a forward for a book? Huh.
Hmm.
What do you think there, Joe?
I haven't really thought about it in that way. So I think they're distinct things in my mind, because solo mode is taking what's there and just applying it to a different player count, and just, yeah, I don't know, for a book, and I've had forwards done for my book. Um, feels more like somebody who's read it and is like, hey, here's kind of almost like an introduction or a different kind of take, and here's what I think about it.
Luke, I would say it's more like a remix of a song. More like a remix of a song. It's not even like a
Yeah.
cover of a song. It's like a remix where it has a particular purpose to it. Like an extended dance remix of a song that was neither extended nor dance when it started, right? It's got all the booms, 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 booms. Then never had those, right? There you go. So yeah, next week I got nothing. We're not doing much. I'll be on a beach somewhere, I guess. And Joe, hey, you get the last word. What is your piece of final advice?
I'd say if you're a new game designer, best thing you can do is just do it. I've met so many people who are like, oh, I've got this game idea, and it's about this and that. And it's like, oh, that sounds really cool. Are you working on it? Oh, not yet. I'm gonna do it. And then you see them, 6 months later. You're like, oh, how's that game coming along? Oh, I haven't really done anything or whatnot. So I think just putting together an MVP, minimum viable prototype, is so key. Just getting on the table for that first time. It's just kind of breaking the ice, getting things started. So many people get stuck before they get to that point because they're just overthinking it. Maybe the game's just in their brain and they're trying to perfect it before it comes out, or it's just too daunting. Well, you don't have to make 300 individual cards with individual art. Just make 10, print them off, try it out by yourself, try it out with a friend or family member, see what's working, what's not, and just build from there. But you need a starting point. So I'd say just do it. If you got an idea, put together a prototype and just give it a try.
There you go, everybody. Just do it. Just Nike that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Let's go. All right, everybody. We will see you here in 2 weeks when we'll have Marie and
Pauline.
yeah, Pauline Fate from Hot Banana Games, and we'll be talking about Lion Dance and Steam Up and bunnies on the moon, and all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff for our. I guess it'll be our Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year extravaganza. All right, so we'll see you then. See you later. Thanks, Joe. See you later, Hafiz. It was great seeing you all. Bye, everybody. We'll
Thanks so
talk to you
much.
soon.